Immigration into the West is a huge issue. I talk about it all the time, but sometimes it's important to talk about what is driving mass immigration. What I mean is, why do these people want to come here? Why do millions of Third World and Middle Eastern immigrants flock to Britain and the West every year? And let's just throw some figures in there. 650,000 immigrants entered Britain last year alone, and that's just the ones the government knows about. It doesn't take into account all those who entered the country illegally. But why are they coming here? We are told these people are fleeing hardship, that they are fleeing terror, that they are quote-unquote refugees. But the fact is, if they were refugees, wouldn't they be largely composed of women and children? Because when I see images of these people clamouring to get into Europe, they seem to be mainly young men of fighting age. And when they have a foothold here, that's when they send for their wife, their children, or go back to their native land for an arranged marriage, all of which only serves to flood the country with even more immigrants. You see, this isn't about fleeing terror or about escaping war. It's about economics. These people are nothing more than economic migrants, and they are attracted to countries like Britain because our welfare state and benefit system will hand them everything on a place to live, utility bills paid for, free money, operations on a health service, free dentistry, you name it, they can have it. And if they can't articulate what they want because they don't even speak English, don't worry, the government will pay for an interpreter at a huge sum per hour to ensure they can tell us exactly what they desire. These huge financial incentives for immigrants to come to the West are the primary way that internationalists have managed to attract so many immigrants to come to the West. The enemies of our people have made it financially very attractive for these people to come here. And these internationalists and their puppets in the Western government have given particularly large concessions and incentives to Islamic immigrants. In fact, the government in the UK has done much to ensure that Britain and her laws have been changed dramatically to accommodate Muslims and make life easier for them. But wait a minute, the Liberal will say. Immigration enriches Britain and the West in general. Wave upon wave of immigrants from all over the world has grown our economy and made Britain and the West more prosperous. Well, this is actually complete nonsense. So let's have some facts. The British government spends a minimum of $13 billion a year from tax revenues on unproductive Muslims, at a time when the government is trying to create £12 billion in annual cuts by targeting the handicapped, the elderly and the poor amongst our own people. The government are essentially ignoring a group that is highly overrepresented above anyone else in welfare exploitation. The Daily Telegraph reported in 2012 that 50% of all Muslim men are unemployed and a staggering 75% of all Muslim women are unemployed. Muslims are also on sick leave more than anyone else, with 2001 figures revealing that 24% of females and 21% of males claim disability. Muslims are the most likely among all religious groups to be living in accommodation rented from the council or from housing associations, making up 28% of the total. 4% of these live completely rent-free. As if this is not enough, the total prison population in the UK amongst serious criminals is now 35 to 39% Muslim. This clearly shows that Islamic immigration into Britain has caused a huge drain on our society. But how has this happened? What has changed to make it so easy for Muslims to claim benefits and take so much from the system? Well, let's look at how the British system of unemployment welfare benefits works. The Conservative government has repeatedly tried to make it harder to get on benefits. Well, for the native people anyway. For example, if you are sacked from a job because of your own poor behaviour, i.e. not being made redundant, or if you walk out of your job, you cannot claim benefits for up to 26 weeks. That's half a year. This has been done to incentivise people to stay in work and to prevent people walking out of employment and simply choosing to go on benefits and claiming from the welfare state as a lifestyle choice. Now, many people might think that changing the welfare system to incentivise people to stay in employment is a good thing. After all, this reduces the burden on the state and keeps people in employment. But here's the rub. These rules don't apply to Muslims, as under the government's own guidelines on how the welfare benefits system works, Muslims can still leave employment and claim benefits immediately. I quote directly from the government guidelines. The following are examples of religious or conscientious objections which may provide good reason. Number 1, an objection to employment that involves the handling or supply of alcohol, cigarettes, tobacco, or certain food products, e.g. pork. 2, a religious objection to being in employment on a particular day each week. Number 3, an objection to employment with something which may be used to destroy life, whether human or animal. Number 4, a religious objection to being in employment with members of the opposite sex. End quote. So essentially, all a Muslim has to do to get out of work is to cite strong religious convictions and an opposition to carrying out work which conflicts with his or her religious beliefs. This is highlighted in cases of Muslim shop workers in British supermarkets who have refused to serve certain products, such as alcohol and pork. Any other employee would have been sacked for this and would not be allowed to claim benefits. However, under new British government guidelines, Muslims who do this would be in their rights not to do their job, and if they were sacked or left employment, would have full rights to claim benefits. Here is an example the government gives from the same document, and I quote, "Nazir is a machine operator and has worked in a small factory for 5 years on a bench by himself away from other operators. Due to a reorganisation of the factory floor and how tasks are to be performed, Nazir is told he will have to go to work as part of a team comprised of women co-workers. Nazir explains to his employer that his religion forbids him from working in close quarters with women who are not his own family and requests that he be allowed to continue to work by himself or in a male-only group. The employer says they cannot accommodate Nazir's request, as they do not have enough male operators to make up a team. The new processes are to cut costs, and it is no longer possible to provide him with space separately on his own. The policy is to make all the operators multi-skilled and flexible, rather than to concentrate on being skilled in just one part of the process. Nazir leaves the job." End quote. I have placed a link to this government document in the description of the video below. So as you can see, the government have made it very easy for Muslims to walk out of work on religious grounds. And this may well be a very valid reason as to why their levels of unemployment are so high. Whereas native Brits could not walk out of employment and onto welfare benefits, Muslims can, giving them a fast track to an easy life. But that's not all. Not only can Muslims walk out of work on religious grounds, they also get special treatment at work. For example, they can pray up to 5 times a day whilst at work. And how does that affect a business? I read this from an article in the Sunday Express. Peugeot car plant closed as Muslim workers took too many prayer breaks, claims official. The head of France's centre-right Union of Democrats and Independents political party, Jean-Christophe Lagarde, has claimed that a PSA Peugeot Citroën car plant had to close because it hired too many unproductive Muslim employees. He said the site closed because Muslim employees were constantly taking unscheduled prayer breaks and had become unproductive. It's the truth. A Peugeot official told me that it was one, but obviously not the only, of the reasons the plant was shut down. End quote. So at the same time as Muslims are allowed to walk out of work for religious reasons, the workplace is constantly having to change in order to meet their demands. Something that has had an undeniable impact on productivity and is actually putting the future of entire companies at risk. This article from The Express explained, and I quote, "According to an opinion poll carried out by the Randstad Institute and the Observatory for Religion in Companies, 2/3 of French employers, 65%, have noticed an alarming rise in religious demands at work. The study concluded that religion has imposed itself in the workplace and that having pious colleagues has become the norm." End quote. And this isn't just happening in France. So how does the so-called conservative British government aim to tackle this problem of unemployment amongst the Islamic community? Well, they don't. They intend to pander to them even more. Whatever happened to the old saying, "When in Rome, do as the Romans do"? The government recently issued a report titled "The Government Response to the Women and Equalities Committee Report on Employment Opportunities for Muslims in the UK." And I quote from that report, "The government must work to rebuild trust with Muslim communities by adopting an approach to integration which focuses on how it improves the life chances of disadvantaged communities, rather than through the lens of counter-extremism. The government must set out how it will address the challenge and work to achieve equality for British Muslims. This aim is distinct and should be separated from the government's work to challenge extremism. The Prime Minister has made clear that her priority is to make Britain a country that works for everyone, and that no one should be held back because of their race, gender or religion. This means tackling injustices and inequalities, including amongst deprived and ethnic minority communities." Dame Louise Casey's independent review, published on the 5th of December 2020, 2016 has made a number of recommendations on how we can go further to boost opportunity and integration in the most isolated and deprived communities in Britain. The government will be responding to the findings of the Casey Review in due course. Key to this is the drive to improve the quality of data so that employers, universities and the government can all play their part in helping Muslim people achieve their potential. A lack of comprehensive data is hindering analysis of the barriers that Muslim people face in achieving equality of opportunity." End quote. So there you have it. Read the document yourself. Again, I have placed a link to it in the description of the video below. The government's response to the growing problem of Muslim welfare benefit claimants and Muslim unproductivity in the workplace is to hand them more concessions and not to give them equal rights, but to give them special rights. But what is the effect of all this? Well, essentially, the largest effect is a huge boom in the Muslim population in Britain. Effectively, the British taxpayer is paying for vast numbers of Muslim immigrants to sit at home all day and breed. Whereas native Brits are having fewer children and couples are having to work longer hours to make ends meet, and many British couples feel as though they can't afford to breed, Muslims are staying at home, having everything handed to them on a plate as they have children at an alarming rate. And of course, while the government is eager to recognise Islamic beliefs in the workplace, they do not recognise Islamic marriage, which means Muslims can have multiple wives without being prosecuted for bigamy, which of course means they are having multiple children by multiple women who are classed by the British state as unattached mothers, and therefore, essentially, they are getting paid to have children. And who are the ones paying for all this? The British taxpayer, who is of course overwhelmingly white and non-Muslim. This is how the enemies of the West, the internationalists and their puppets in the government have conspired to bring about our end. We are being replaced by immigrants who have been tempted to the West through generous handouts and increasingly large concessions in the workplace, which not only allow them to claim benefits more easily, but destroy the productivity of firms which are forced to bend over backwards to suit their needs. Make no mistake, these people do not come here and give a boost to our economy. They come here for benefits and an easy life, and our enemies want them here because they want to see us bred out and replaced. They want to destroy our people and obliterate our culture. This is white genocide, and the saddest thing is we are all paying for our own destruction. Thank you for